My name's Tom Place, this is Chasing Cars, and today I'm going to be introducing you to my new long-termer, the Ford Mustang Mach-E. I'm going to be outlining my plans for this vehicle over the next 3 months, and also taking you through my first impressions and a few concerns that I do have for this vehicle. Now, of course, in 2023, this was finally introduced to Australia right at the tail end, and we were pretty excited for its arrival, given that it had already been on sale in the States for about 3 years, and for all intents and purposes, it had actually performed fairly well there. But when it arrived in Australia, it came at a bit of a cost, and unfortunately it was quite a big one. With a starting price of around $80,000, it was priced far above rivals like the Tesla Model Y, the Kia EV6, and also the Hyundai Ioniq 5. And unfortunately, the end result was a little bit predictable, with our initial reviews finding that although this was a pretty good vehicle overall, its price was simply too high to be competitive in this segment, and the sales results haven't been too great for this vehicle in 2024. But at the time of filming this review, Ford's actually given this vehicle 2 major price cuts across the entire range, and that made us think, given its inherent strengths, is it time that we had a look at this vehicle and see what it's like as a long-term proposition. Now, before we get started in today's video, please don't forget to like and comment, and also subscribe to have a look at the full verdict later on, and also to join us on our way to 200k. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. Now, for our long-term tenure, we've gone with the mid-spec premium, which costs around about $80,000, so certainly not cheap even after those price cuts, but it is down from about $91, $92 when it first launched in Australia. Importantly though, it comes with a 600-kilometre range claim, which is personally important to me as I do love to do long trips across Australia. It also comes with an 18-kilowatt boost for the rear motor and 216 kilowatts of power and 430 newton meters of torque, cutting that 0 to 100 claim down from 6.6 to 6.2 when you're comparing the Select to the Premium you have before me. There's a couple of other things you also get by going to the Premium, though overall the specification is fairly similar to the Select. You get these LED headlights here, which are a little bit nicer than the ones on the base model, and a few other bits and bobs inside the cabin. But the thing I'm the most excited to find out is, how does this thing drive? It's rear-wheel drive and it's got a Mustang badge on the front. You know, there's a lot of claims on whether it should be called that in the first place, but it should be at least a little bit of fun, shouldn't it? I don't know. I guess I'm going to find that out. Jumping into the interior of the Mach-E is certainly an event, for better or worse. It really stands out to you with a number of things, like this 15.5-inch touchscreen and this B&O stereo that goes across the dashboard here. I really like the integration of it. It looks so good instead of just having some cheap feeling plastic, which seems to be on every single dashboard of every single car out there. It looks really nice, and it also sounds really good. Such a great addition to the Mach-E, that one. Notably though, both of those key major features are available on the Select, which is going to save you a crisp $15,000. And really, I think that's going to be one of the things I'm going to be comparing and contrasting against over my tenure. Is it worth the upgrade from the base model? Because that base model does seem like fairly sharp value in comparison to this one. You do get a few other things by stepping up to the Premium, like some ambient lighting, some red stitching around the cabin, and also some scuff plates by the doors. But I don't think any of those things are particularly enticing when we've already got all of these bigger touchscreen options and the stereo inbuilt on the standard model. But I suppose the main thing is the range. Anyway, let's take a look at some other parts around about this cabin. So we've got a nice, fairly traditional wheel here. Look at that, normal indicators. You don't get that on every EV. And you've also got a 10.2-inch digital driver's display up here. Doesn't really do all that much, but it is nice to have that here instead of like many rivals seem to do nowadays by having it over here. It doesn't have a heads-up display, but I don't think that's the end of the world personally. But what about storage? Let's start with the doors, and this is not a great point for the Mach-E, I gotta say. So I've got my drink bottle here, fairly normal in size, and I can't really put it in the section here without it sliding down. And the reason for that is because the plastic part of the door is actually pretty short. If you open the door up, you'll see that there's actually a huge amount of chassis dedicated to just the battery underneath here, which is perhaps unsurprising considering it's over nearly 100 kilowatt hours gross. But the end result is you have absolutely bugger all storage in the doors here. We do have a little bit more underneath the armrest. Open up like so. Little bit in here, got a 12-volt socket as well, which is all very nice. And we've got a glove box, you know, just in here to keep your basic items, but not especially enormous. We do have a little bit of extra storage down below here underneath the center. And of course, we have got our wireless phone charger. Now, this is a bit interesting because it feels like they've tried to copy Tesla, but they haven't really gone the whole yards, because of Teslas, of course, have 2 phone chargers, which I was excited for when I initially saw this because I carry around 2 phones. But if we pick up both of my phones here, and we also pick up this matting underneath, you'll see that there's only actually one little bit here for actually charging your phone. So only the left slot is used for charging phones, which is a little bit disappointing. I feel like Ford could just go the extra mile there. Now, some other features around this cabin I have to point out is the panoramic sunroof, and this is one that I don't love because although a panoramic sunroof is very lovely, I don't have the ability to close it. Now, Ford tells me there is a good amount of UV protection built into here, but look, I don't think anything really beats a full-on traditional metal roof or a blind that goes across a panoramic sunroof when it comes to sun protection. Now, lastly, let's talk about seats, because I don't know whether I like the seats on this model just yet. They're fairly soft, and if you've ever slept on a very soft couch or a very soft mattress, you know there's often a bit of a trade-off between support and initial comfort from a soft feeling base. So I need to go for a good drive in this one, just assess whether it actually has that good support for your back and other things like that on those long trips. But look, at the moment, and the initial sit-down experience is quite nice. But look, that's enough for the front. Let's check out the back. Quickly jumping in the back seat now. Look, I have a good amount of space here, a bit of knee room, a bit of toe room, but my thighs do sit fairly high, and that's because the floor is quite high, once again owing to that fairly large battery pack. It's unfortunately something we do see in EVs fairly often, but look, for the most part I find myself being fairly comfortable in these seats. They're nice and soft and they do hold you in to a certain degree, but that's going to take a little bit more studying, I think. The visibility is also fairly okay, but the one thing that really does annoy me about the back seat here is the air vents. This is going to be some of the worst placement I've ever seen for a set of air vents. They're genuinely below the height of the seat here, and really if it wants to keep my ankles cool, that's nice, but if I'm actually trying to get some air on my face, it's just going to hit my knee. It's really not going to be very effective at all, and it's a little bit disappointing, I find, as a parent, because I do want good airflow in the back seat for my daughter sitting in her rearwards facing baby seat. Unfortunately, that situation just is not ideal. So what about the storage situation? Let's start at the boot. Power tailgate, as you would expect at this price point, and we reveal a 402 litre boot, which isn't the biggest boot in the world, I gotta say, but one thing that becomes immediately apparent to me when looking at it is the fact that it is fairly deep, and I have had my pram in here over the last week or so, and it's been easier to sort of put it in the back here and still have a bit of storage left over. So hopefully I'll be able to go to the shops and still have a pram in the back here. Now, underneath the floor here, you will find there as well absolutely no spare tire. So how great's that? That's a joke, by the way. And we do have some tie down points here, and there is a 12-volt socket. But what we don't have is a 3-pin socket, which I think is really disappointing for a fully electric vehicle. Now, Ford is starting to roll this out on a few of their models, like the e-Transit Custom and also the incoming Ranger PHEV, in what they call Pro Power on Board. And I think this is really one of those things that should just come standard on electric vehicles. It's got a huge battery in this thing. Just let us use it, guys. But of course, that isn't the end of the storage situation. Once I just pop this up here, we reveal that it does actually have a frunk like any self-respecting EV. 134 extra litres of space up the front here, and it is kind of waterproof and lined in here, so you can chuck all your beach gear and things like that. But you do have to go around and pop it from the passenger side here to get it fully in position, which I think is a little bit interesting, and I think it's a bit of a downside with the frunk situation, because they want to make extra sure that this isn't just going to fly up in the event of an accident. They do try and make sure it's kind of difficult to get open, and that means I think that unfortunately I'm not going to use it too much. Now, this being a fully electric vehicle, one of the things I really do have to keep an eye on is the charging situation. The AC charging speed is 10.5 kilowatts, which is pretty impressive. The DC charging speeds, they're fairly okay at 150 kilowatts. However, neither of those numbers I plan on being particularly relevant to my situation. And the reason for that is I am a renter, which means I don't have a wall box at home. And even if I was given permission to do so, I'm not particularly interested in shelling out thousands for someone else's house. So where does that leave me? Well, essentially, I'm going to be planning on using a regular 3-pin style socket like you might use for plugging in your kettle to see if I can top up the Mach-E every night and recuperate all the energy that I've used during the day, and see if I can actually pull it off, or whether this is just too thirsty for the amount of power that my house is putting out. This October will mark my 4th year at chasing cars, and during my time here, I've run a number of long-termers, small SUVs, station wagons, and medium SUVs, and conventionally powered, hybrid, and also plug-in hybrid guys. But one thing I've never done, either personally or professionally, is lived with an EV every single day. Sure, I've driven many, and I've also reviewed many more, but living with one, I think, is an altogether different proposition. And that's actually the thing I'm most excited to do during my next 3 months with this car. Living with an electric vehicle vehicle every single day, and I'm really keen to see if I can keep it topped up just using the 3-pin socket at home. It's going to be certainly a very interesting test. I also want to find out just how far this thing can go on a charge. Can it hit that 600-kilometer range claim? And also, is it as fun as the Mustang badge implies? Look, we're going to have to wait and find out for that one. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you want to see the verdict of this Mach-E. But for now, that's all we have for you. Thank you for watching Chasing Cars.